Coaches, are you ready to revolutionize your game preparation? For the past 5 seasons, coaches across the nation have been using the ultimate scout team game changer, the Coachpad. Imagine this: no more scrambling on weekends to prep scout cards, no more fumbling with paper and binders. Whether you're drawing your cards digitally with a computer program or sketching them by hand, the Coachpad is your all in one solution. Picture yourself on the practice field effortlessly managing your scout team or standing on the sidelines during game day, syncing adjustments from the press box to your coaches on the sideline and back. With the coach pad, you can clearly see your scout cards even in the brightest sunlight. No more squinting or dealing with the wind blowing clear vinyl sleeves everywhere. This offseason, take your coaching to the next level. Get your coach pad today at thecoachpad.com and gear up for a winning season ahead.
Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Packer podcast. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that jazz, so people can find this and other videos. Make sure you check out our sponsor, Coachpad. Today we have the head football coach at Florence High School in the great state of Texas, just north of Austin, Coach Draper. We're going to talk a little slot T and various other things today. Coach, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. Before we get started, how did you get all the way to being the head football coach there at Florence?
I appreciate you having me on. My whole story is kind of a crazy story. I went to high school in Coppers Cove, Texas, which is right near Florence, and I grew up. I was like, okay, this would be a nice place to coach. Small town, would like it, could build a community kind of thing, and that's why I kind of drifted me towards Florence. Now, here's the odd thing: my head football coach in high school was Hal Mumme, and we were doing run and shoot back then. I went to college in Texas, was not enjoying it. Well, that's when Hal moved to Iowa Wesleyan, a little small school in Iowa, and I went up there with him. And he got a guy named Mike Leach to come help be his OC. So we were there at the beginning of the air raid, and it's kind of funny. I'm in books about the air raid beginnings. You wouldn't expect that out of a slot T guy, but here I am. Graduated college, and then Hal went to Valdosta and went that direction. And stupid me, I decided I wanted to get into high school football in Texas instead of trailing with him, where I would be the, offensive line coach at Oklahoma and making six figures. I decided to go to Texas and be poor the rest of my life. But here I am. My first job was in Sweeney, and we were running a wing tee out of the eye, kind of a multiple wing tee. So I kind of cut my teeth running trap, running some GT, running some toss sweep. Kind of learning those things coming back from having to do the, 2x2 or 3x1 and doing all the, the air raid passing game. Then somewhere around 2004, my mom started having some health issues. So that's how I joined Jerry Vance at Liberty Hill. And that's where I got into the slot T in 2004. And Coach Vance, I interviewed with him and he hired me. And I went and visited with him over the summer, and he gave me a rule sheet. It had all these rules on it, and everybody's supposed to be doing this and that and this. And I go, Coach Vance, this is all confusing. He goes, you'll get the hang of it. I said, can you teach blocking? Yes, sir. Can you teach tackling? Yes, sir. Then you can coach football. We'll get to the rest. So that's pretty much it. And that got me into the slot T. Been there ever since. I was at Liberty Hill for 13 years. We're fortunate enough to win 2 state championships. Learned a lot from Jeff Walker. He was the head coach. He was the assistant head coach. I was the OC, and we kind of fed off of each other. I kind of have to pull him in every once in a while. Say, "Hey Jeff, just keep running this. It'll work. Just trust me." And that way. And sometimes I give a suggestion. It wouldn't work, but most of the time it would. But he left and took a head coaching job. Then I took over calling plays. So I've been calling plays since 2008. Went to the semis against Salina that year. Been to the semis a couple times. And the beauty of the slot T is you're taking a lesser athlete and you're giving them a chance. So that was kind of the connection with that in the air raid. The air raid came out or was developed because you had everybody at the time was 2 tight ends running power I, running downhill, and you could take a lesser lineman or a lesser kid, spread the ball out a little bit, move the ball, control the clock, kind of do those things. That's kind of how the air raid developed. because everybody was packing it in, but now it's everybody spread out. So now flip it 20 some years later, now everybody's spread out. Now we can kind of come in and compact, and people can't figure out how to um, how to stop this because they're so used to lining up to, trips or whatever. So it's a little different ball game there. From Liberty Hill, I went to Edna. Was there for a little bit, became the head coach at Edna. Then I went to Marble Falls, and then I finally found my way to Florence. And I'm so glad I'm there. It's an enjoyable place. We're not winning as I'd like to, but building a program, and that's what it's all about, building relationships.
Well, I mean, he knows what I do. That takes time, and not every place is an immediate turnaround. Some places are at a little different spot to where you have to do some things. And I mean, this is one of the things I'm curious about when I talk to slot T people is kind of your process. So when you again, kids that are gonna play football are gonna play football. There's some kids you that aren't out, you might have to go get and all that jazz. And but like when you're installing the slot T, like where do you start? Like, because I think everybody's got a little bit different starting point. I know Liberty Hill's got a certain starting point and everybody, but I talking to people, there's a couple of differences here where somebody starts and somebody ends. Like all of you essentially have the same packages. Let's be honest. We joked before we came on about a-hole reverse, and that's how the commandment that you have to run that play and you have to get to the smallest, fastest kid. But like where do you start in your process of, because again, you guys get a lot more access to kids and people up north and with your
Yeah.
athletic periods and so forth. And where do you start with the slot T?
We I learned this at Liberty Hill, and like I said, I learned it from Jeff Walker and Jerry. We start with the two. I prefer to start with the 200 series, the running 234, 236, just running base power, because you can run that. You can run the pitch off of it, 228, or you can run the tackle trap. So you can involve three players off of one scheme and kind of work it that way. I know people that would start off running the traps and sweeps, like you said, but I would prefer to run a power series. The hardest thing that we have to do coming into Florence for that matter was teaching kids how to take a snap under center. A lot of kids these days don't do that anymore. They don't know how to take a snap under center. So we have to spend some time doing that. Then we just teach them, it's pretty simple to take a snap, take a 45-degree step and hand the ball off to somebody versus having to reverse out, put your back to the defense and then try to hide the ball. So we'll teach the 200 series first, kind of build a little confidence, and then we'll start working on the 300 series, working on the traps and that kind of thing. Small school where we are, we really don't have a whole lot more than that on because our kids have to go both ways. This year at Florence, we had 8 kids start both ways. So I couldn't add tons on. Now, Liberty Hill, we had, by the time I left, we had, I had 18, 19 5-minute segments where I could work with just the offensive kids. So we would have a bunch on. We would be able to specialize a lot of different things. So you kind of got to tailor it to where you are and what you have. But if I were to go into a program right now and start somewhere, I'd start with the 200 series. Just be real basic, simple with it. And then, because you can get double teams, you can get that kind of thing working. You can get a little trap action. You could toss it outside. So you kind of work a little bit of everything and try to get all the kids involved. And then you can build into the trap sweeps and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Now, also with that, like, 'cause I know again, if people want to learn more about the 200 series or kind of an overview, one, I have other stuff, but I know you talk for Wings and Things and on both those topics as well. Like, I'm also curious, like, from a small school perspective, like, what is your kind of like practice look like? Because again, I've talked to people at Liberty and some other places, like when you're a big 6A, 5A, 4A school, you have again, not many of your kids are going two ways. You might have a
Mhm.
couple, but like those are your special super athlete kids. Um, but like when you're at your size, like everybody's got to go two ways, or at least learn a second position. And so, how do you manage that from a small school practice perspective?
Um, Somewhat obviously, I hate to sound generic, but a lot of it is you have to know your kids and what they can handle mentally as well as physically. But what we do is I mean, again, I learned this from Jerry Vance. It's the Kiss It principle. And he would have it on his board, KISS, and then he would have the initials spelled out. Keep it simple, stupid. And that's kind of how we would keep it. And I'll be honest with you, that's one of the beauties of the slot T. It looks complex to people, but once you know where to go, it doesn't matter what the defense lines out. It doesn't matter what defense it gives you. You're going that way as fast and as hard as you can. So with small school kids, again, we learn the basic packages. Like we go into our first scrimmage, we would have 2 weeks of 2 days and have a scrimmage after 2 weeks against another opponent. We may only have 6 to 7, maybe 8 plays on. But we're going to try to be as good as we can on those 8 plays versus whatever they come out at us. So we can try to execute. And of course, we fine tune from that point on. But we would, we keep it generic. So the 200 series, the beauty of it is what 200 series is it's basically a fullback ISO series. You either run a fullback ISO or fullback power to a tight end set. And then you have a pitch off of that. And it's not an option pitch. It's just a true, we're going to pitch the ball. Or you can run a tackle trap off of faking the fullback ISO. So in the backfield, it's a very similar action to everybody else. So the kids may only have to learn 1 or 2 variations per play. And even then it's real simple. So that's kind of the whole premise with small schools, is that you want to keep it as easy as you can, because not only do my kids have to know their rules on offense, but they're going to have to know where to line up on defense and what happens if they line up in this formation, what do they do on this stunt, all those other things. So I usually get about an hour with them, maybe 50 minutes, 55 minutes, because we'll do 5 minutes of punt in our period. So we'll kind of keep it real simple like that. One thing to help us is the repetition of it all. Being that you don't have a lot on, you're going to keep repping 234. You're going to rep 349, which is a buck sweep to the weak side. You're going to rep 8-hole reverse. You're going to be able to rep those things over and over versus whatever defense you want. One of the things I learned when I went to Edna, I learned this from Jerry Long when he was at East Bernard. And East Bernard, when he was there, they won a state championship and they built up a program at 2A, 3A level. And one of the things I learned from him is this thing what we do, we call pods. We'll break it down into segments, into chunks. So we'll have like the strong side, strong tackle, strong end, halfback working power. So they're working 234. They're seeing all the different looks. You can work a G series. We have a 434G. We can work that. And we also work our buck sweep to the strong side with them. So that, and you can give them multiple looks just over and over and over again. That was really the only live session we do, is any kind of pods we do. We'll take our guard, center, fullback, quarterback. We're working our traps. So we can get the mesh with the traps down. We can also get our goal lines with the sweeps down. And then we'll work our quick side. So we'll take our quick tackle, our weak side tackle, quick tackle, our swing man, which is our receiver, and our tailback, and they're just working 349. They're just working blocking down, blocking down, blocking down. And you can give them a bunch of different looks too, because usually that's going to be your weakest blockers. So you only give them really one play to really focus on, but usually your better blocker is going to be your strong tackle, strong end. So you can give them a couple of different looks against a couple of different plays. But we just rep that about 10 minutes on Mondays, and then we'll come and do a half line on Tuesday for 10 minutes. And I learned this from him, and I love it because you can break it down. You can give them multiple looks. So when you go to team, it just kind of all fits together. And you don't have to worry about somebody running into somebody else because they don't know what's going on. So it's a really good deal. But I think the biggest thing with small school versus big school is that you can only focus on, base 10, maybe 15 plays, and you have to keep those simple. And if you add a play, is it anything like what you've done before? Or what do you have to teach something totally brand new? And if you have to teach something totally brand new, you better rep it until you don't look like you've never ran it before. So
now with that, because you talked 10, oh, I'm about to sneeze there. No, maybe not. Okay. So you talked again 10, 15 plays, and do those back end plays change year to year depending on your personnel? Like obviously you're still
yes,
200 series, but like when you're getting down to, or it'd be the 400 or whatever your back end like 4 to 5 is, that the last series you install, is that one vary year to year based off your kids, or you still try to keep a certain set install schedule?
No, exactly. It varies upon some of it. I'll be honest with you. Some of it is personal preference. Like everybody, like you said, has a go-to play. That's their kind of favorite play. But you generally try to tailor it to whatever your kids can do and who's you want to, just like spread teams, you want to put the ball in your playmaker's hands the best you can. When I was at Edna, we had a fullback who went on to play linebacker at Texas State. Great athlete, 6'2", 6'3", 205 pounds, ran like a 4'6", 4'7", 40. So, he rushed for 2,000 yards. Oh yeah, I'm going to give him the ball. So I found creative ways to give him the football, and when I was in a game trying to figure out what to call, the people in the headsets with whatever it is, make sure it has a 3 in the middle of it. Give him the ball. It's like, okay, and there you go. You can't be that stupid. But some of it is you look and see what your opponent runs. What do you think your opponent's going to line up in, or something you might be able to take advantage of. Then you might add it that week. If you know a team's going to give you a quick side B gap, for example, they're going to give you a quick side 1 and maybe a 5 or a 7, because a lot of teams want to give you that 1 to stop the trap and a 7 or a 5 to stop the buck sweep, stop 349. So then we might put a quick side ISO on, just, and expect our tailback to lead up on linebacker. Am I expecting it to be a huge play? No, but if you're going to give me 4 yards, simple, just by your alignment, I'll put it in and take it. The footwork would be just like 234. It's just going to the quick side now versus the strong side. So, if the defense, we think they're going to give us something, we might add that play for that. But we will add plays based upon our personnel, trying to find creative ways to give our guys the ball. And I went to Marble, and I was there for 3 years. And our third year, we weren't so good. We had a halfback, and a good runner. He ended up having to play quarterback a little bit because, various reasons. They got into, discipline issues, or starting 2 quarterbacks. Both of them we were going to go play a game day. They both are in alternative school after that. So that was a lot of fun. But anyways, so we had to move him to quarterback, but then we moved him around. But later in the year, I just added any plays just to try to give him the ball halfback, added, invented some tosses, the things that I had from way back when I was at Sweeney running wing T. We added a toss out of the eye just to try to get him the ball to the strong side. So a lot of it depends upon, if you have a playmaker, you want to get him the ball, or if you think a defense is going to give you something, or they have a hole in their defense, then you try to run that play. Just try to get you so you have something to hang your hat on to get those 3, 4, 5 yards, keep the ball away from them.
Okay. Now, one other question I have is staffing, because I talked to these other slot T schools, and they have 85 offensive line coaches, and that must be a wonderful world that know that many offensive line coaches, but also be able to hire all of them. Like, what does small school staffing look like for you guys? Because if it's small school in Texas, and I know it's there are some people trying to branch out outside of the state of Texas and learn it. That's part of the knowledge spread, I think, helps. But if they're at a small school in Ohio, Iowa, whatever state it is,
Yeah.
how do you set up your staff at your school?
I have 9 male coaches, 7 through 12 at my school, including myself. So what we do is I have 2 dedicated middle school coaches, and they teach at the middle school. I have a third who teaches at the middle school but is assigned to the varsity, but he'll go with them on game days and work with them kind of during the week. But they'll shut their practices down about halfway through our practice. So he coaches defense. He coaches outside linebackers with the defense. So we'll start offense first because we'll have our full complement of 3 coaches on our offensive staff. So I'm lucky I have a guy named Josh Blake, and Josh Blake is really an offensive line coach. He was at Liberty Hill. He knows the offense. He's my offensive coordinator. I let him coach the backs. I take the linemen, and then I have a receivers coach who is our basketball coach who's never coached football before. So I've had to teach him kind of how to do things, and he's picked it up and done a great job with them. But I had to spell out specifically what to teach because he has no football background. So really, we've got 3 guys on offense. I've got 4 guys on defense with my DC. I have a D-line coach. a linebackers coach, and our strong safeties coach. He also coaches junior high. Our DC, which is a good thing, is a guy named Jimmy Duncan. Jimmy Duncan played in the slot T for Coach Bush at Gregory Portland. He coached with Coach Bush at San Marcos. He coached with Coach Hall at Western Hills, and he coached at Liberty Hill with Jerry Vance. Now, he was on the defensive side of the ball for some of those, but he's got a slot T background. So a lot of times I'll pull him over and I'll get him to run the quarterbacks for me because he'll know the quarterback steps while Coach Blake's doing backfield blocking or whatever. So I'll have him helping me out too. So really, I've got 3.5 football offensive coaches and 4 defensive coaches. I've coached defense before. I started out coaching defense way back in the day. I'd prefer to be on the offensive side, but I can do it if I have to. But it's one of those things where I'm a better offensive coach. One of the things we did at Edna, they had 14 coaches, 7 through 12, and we had 4 dedicated middle school coaches. So he had 3 JV or freshman coaches. We had 60 kids out for football. So we had 3 dedicated sub-varsity coaches. And then we had 4 or 5 dedicated varsity coaches. And the varsity coaches would coach both sides. So not only was I the OC offensive line coach, but I was also the defensive line coach, which that got a little confusing because a lot of times I'm trying to make my adjustments while the defense is on the field and I'm not really watching my 2 techniques. And, we're lining up in a 1 and a 7 to a tight end. It's like, what are we doing? So yeah, I kind of got away from it. I was like, Jay, can I just focus on offense? He said, yes. That kind of helped. But yeah, it's kind of hard. Like I said, at Liberty Hill, if you had optimal, having 2 offensive line coaches is the best thing, and 1 running back coach. If I had just 3 on staff, if I had a 3rd guy on my staff, like if my basketball coach was very knowledgeable about the slot T, I would probably give him my quick side. I would take the strong side and have my backs coach, my OC doing the backs. If you can get any more, that's just a plus to you. But 3 or 4 would be best. Jeff Walker, bless his heart, he would always brag that he could do it all by himself, and he could watch every position by himself, and he probably could if he had the time. But excuse me, but it gets a little difficult when you're trying to watch mesh point, you're trying to watch blocking up front. Are we doing it correctly? And are you watching back fakes? Are you where your backside, are they going downfield? It gets a little difficult and congested. So generally what I do now is, being that I'm coaching all 6 offensive line positions, I focus at point of attack, make sure that I know what they're doing, and then I'll watch backside as it goes and make sure they're getting where they need to be. During a game when I'm doing this, that's kind of what I'll do is I'll watch play side or backside, and I'll see who's making the tackle, why are they making the tackle. If they're making the tackle, that means somebody missed a block, and I'll figure out who missed the block, and I'll try to explain it to them. But it's hard when, like I said, they're on defense, and then at halftime when I'm trying to explain it to them, 3 or 4 of them are out marching in the band in full uniform. So it gets a little difficult. So I'll try to grab them in between quarters and say, hey, look, make sure you do this or you block it this way when you see these things. So it gets to be, it's a challenge. It's a fun challenge. But again, that goes back to having a real simple offense and keeping it real basic. So when you explain something to them, it's not like you're making a drastic change. You're not really throwing crazy stuff out. You're just doing 1 or 2 small things differently.
Yep, and the perils of small school football there, Coach. I've been
Yes.
there. I've been there. Like, I mean, these big school coaches don't understand that. Now, I kind of building off that, like when you're interviewing people with the slot T, because is there anything you're kind of looking for? Because again, not everybody you're interviewing is kind of like you. I mean, you did not have a slot T background when you first got hired to be. You have a combination of, as you said, kind of wing T-ish background and air raid background, which is wing T is close-ish, but air raid is nowhere near,
Right.
at least concept wise. The spacing part and how you're manipulating the field, yes, and that's a whole different discussion. But like, so what do you kind of look for when you're talking to staff for your offense?
Well, when obviously in Texas, these days, of course, you have to teach in Texas to be able to coach.
Yeah.
So these days, you have to have a certified teacher, and as we know, across the U.S., there's a teacher shortage. So getting somebody who's actually certified is the plus. And the next thing I look for is he willing to learn? Is he energetic? I will obviously research his background, see where he came from, do my due diligence, contact that guy. What kind of coach is he? Is he one that's always going to be the guy who's, first one to leave, last one to get out and do any kind of work and just, sits in the office and puts his feet up? Or is he, going to try to hustle and learn those things? Obviously, you want to try to get that as best you can. Again, it goes back to challenges of small school. Well, we're near Austin, we're near Killeen, Texas, and our salaries aren't as much as those schools. So we have to kind of, really have to kind of recruit and try to get them, draw them to our school. It's a lot of it is, we don't have the headaches of big schools. I have no fear when I walk the halls at Florence, Texas. I can, excuse me, a kid asked me this today, Coach, why are you here? I was like, well, I could walk through the halls and say good morning to almost every kid and they know who I am. You know, you do that at a big school and only your football players, maybe a couple of your athletes might know who you are. They might know you're a coach, but they may not know your name. They might not know your thing. So I get to be in contact. I get to, I don't want to use the word touch, but I get to be a part of all their lives. And that's a fulfilling part of it. And you don't get that in big school.
Now, also with this, like I said, me and you talked a little about this before, and I've had the same conversation with Coach Brink and Kilby, and I know the Liberty Hill guys view the same thing. Like, obviously, a lot of you try. There's the old mystique about the slot team mafia and how y'all don't share anything, and if you say anything, well, they'll come after you. But in reality, all of you, at least everyone I've ever talked to with the slot team, is very gracious, very helpful. Will within reason help, like tell you what you need to know, helpful. Like in some's like reported like this, not really giving out trade secrets here, but also some are just private meetings or in person, whatever. And you've kind of talked about, and I think Coach Brink did when I talked to him too, and Coach Kilby has. Again, a lot of the reason a lot of you are presenting some of this information because y'all want younger kids to learn it, and younger coaches, and you want this to pass on. Like, so from that perspective, where do you like? Obviously, I think people know they can talk to Liberty Hill, but like you as an example, as a researcher, where do you go like to talk slot T and learn from and seeing, okay, what are you seeing this year, or um, what resources do you use on a consistent basis?
Uh, well, being in it since '04, and again, being part of the mafia, we want to stay with it. And, when you win state, obviously people want to know what you're doing. How did you win state? What did you do differently to win state? And we were fortunate enough to speak at different clinics, and we got to talk to a bunch of different coaches. And they kind of move on and get to network. And like I said, I've coached down in Houston area. I've coached in the Victoria area. I've coached in Central Texas, and I've been doing this a long time. So I made a lot of different contacts. And of course, being a part of SLAT, like you said, people want to come talk to you and do those things. So if I have an issue or problem, a lot of times I'll call Liberty Hill. I'm still great friends with all those guys at Liberty Hill. In fact, I'll tell you, last year, our school district, when I first got to Florence, I got hired at the beginning of June. And of course, we had a major drought in Texas last year. And the city of Florence cut my water off to my stadium at the end of June. So, middle of July, the superintendent comes up to me and says, we may want to look at somewhere else to play games. And I said, you're kidding. He said, no. And we kept looking at our field get drier and drier, drier. And pretty soon, beginning of August, we're like, we can't, I mean, this is it. So I reached out to everywhere, and Liberty Hill, Kent Walker let us go there twice to play games there, charged us very minimum, and even turned the Jumbotron on for us for our senior night, which was, for our little kids. They tried to make it as special as he could for those kids since they couldn't play on their home field. So, but we have great contacts with them. I'll call Alan Hare, who's now the head coach at Gerald. He was at Chaparral, was at Lago Vista, won games there. I'm in touch with Tom Holcomb, who's the OC at Belleville. Belleville just played for a state championship. They did pretty well. I'll call Franklin every once in a while. Some of those guys, but we stay in touch with those guys. So you get kind of a circle of people, and you say, "Hey, are you seeing this? What have you seen from this?" And I'll get people text me and say, "Hey, how do you block this defense?" I said, "Well, this is how I would do it, depending upon what your kids can handle, and vice versa. I've done that before too. If they have any tips on how to teach it better than me, then feel free, let me know. But yeah, that's kind of a big thing there is that we try to, you make a community of people and you kind of get in touch with those people and you keep talking with them. Coaches around the state, especially the slot team, we've had secret slot team meetings before. Coach Bush used to have them in San Marcos,
Yeah.
and he'd have people talk at them. And so yeah, so we've had that, and that's where you make a connection with some of those guys at those things. A long time ago at coaching school, we would do the same thing at coaching school. They'd say, "Hey, Liberty Hill's at such and such hotel," so that people would come over with their staffs and bring dry erase boards, and we'd sit there during coaching school. And for those of you that don't know, in the state of Texas, we have a convention, which I know the other states do too. The Texas High School State Convention is about 15,000 to 20,000 coaches that'll be there. So we're spread out. A lot of times it's in San Antonio, which if you've never been to San Antonio, you need to go because
Yes.
the Riverwalk is a beautiful place.
It is. Hey,
And
that's a perfect place to
during
host.
coaching school, you can't walk without knowing a coach anywhere on the Riverwalk.
Mhm.
And you hear the word coach, and you'll have 100 guys turn their heads, and it's just wall to wall coaches drinking margaritas, talking football. So it's a lot of fun, and that's where you learn a lot of football. Those things, whether you drink or not, you need to go to some of those things, meet people, get some X's and O's, see how they do it, see how they teach it. Whether maybe they have a drill that you may want to do. Who knows? But that's where you learn a lot. That's where I learned a lot of slot T. Now, like I said, Belleville, they'll give me a call. We'll get together and talk. Liberty Hill, we'll meet together. I met with those guys last coaching school, and I met with Belleville. Went to their hotel, kind of hung out with those guys, and learn a little bit here, learn a little bit there. Just did some things differently. So yeah, it's just that's how you do it. You just kind of network and get numbers and text people and go from there.
Yeah, I've heard stories of Coach Bush's old Texas school meetings during school there. Heard some stories. So
I was there one time, and then we went and John Hall was there, and I was like, "Oh, here, John, you're doing offensive line." John's looking like, "What?"
Yeah.
Just gives him a dry erase marker. Go talk. He's like, "Okay."
Yeah,
So you get to start drawing plays.
yeah, I had one guy tell me about that, and he was like, "Yeah, it's occasionally some people just wouldn't want to talk, so Coach Bush just said, here, go."
Yes.
Yeah, it's not like it's a trade secret. All of you run the same stuff in that room. Like it's not like outsiders are in that room. It's invite only. So
you know, I think that a lot of it is back in the day, we'd make line calls, and you get to the line of scrimmage, and you'd start calling. He's a one. He's a two. I got him. I got this rule, and you'd be able to block whatever they point out based upon their alignment. Well, now that since we've all Jeff kind of was the one who kind of initiated the tempo out of the huddle. We don't really make line calls anymore. So there's really no need to, I mean, you can line up and whatever, it doesn't really matter. We've already got the play called. We're going with what we got. So that's why I think it eliminated a lot of the secrecy in my eyes. You can find a slot T playbook anywhere on the internet. I mean, just like you find any, air raid offense on the internet, but it's just a matter of, you got to know what I'm going to call, when I'm going to call it, be able to line up correctly to it. And like you said, by the time you break the huddle, we expect the ball to be snapped in 3 seconds. And if you can have a 15, 16, 17-year-old kid who's worried about passing geometry and dating his girlfriend figure out we're going to run 349 in 2 to 3 seconds, more power to you. Like I said, most of those guys are usually playing on Saturdays, and they're pretty good. So, but and even then, it wouldn't matter if we did block them because they're probably going to be better than us anyway. So, we try to run away from those guys as best we can.
well, I joked about this before we came on air, but I said I still might ask you about it, and I'm just going to. Why do you think 8-hole reverse has such a mystique? Because again, like I joke that it's in the commandments video that I got those rules off another slot T coach, and every coach, I mean, all of you talk about eight hole reverse because it's a commandment essentially given to your smallest, fastest kid, and it's a joke, but it's also serious. And then when you talk to defensive guys, they all freak out about stopping eight hole reverse because they know at some point she's going to hit for a bunch of yards if you don't. So why do you think it has such a mystique amongst people in and outside of the fraternity?
I think your a-hole reverse is your true misdirection play. And slot T is a lot about misdirection. And that is your true misdirection play because you're giving two fakes before you give the ball to one player. For those of you who don't know what a-hole reverse is, it's kind of like running a starburst kickoff return in the backfield. Quarterback's literally going to turn his back to the defense, fake it to one player, fake it to another player, then hand it to a third. So it is your true misdirection. Now, your tailback, the one who's getting the ball, is usually your fast GoDaddy guy. He's not your best blocker. He's probably going to be your weakest back. Your one who's going to close his eyes when he has to go in and make contact with people. So he is going to be your fast dude. And you run it, especially at lower levels. You're faking buck sweep. You're faking 349. So buck sweep to the slot side. You're faking the slot, faking the slot, faking the buck sweep, faking the trap. And you run it over. Next thing you know, boom, you're popping tailback around the end. Your sub varsity kids get so trained chasing the buck sweep to the slot that they don't see the little kid running back the other way. So that's how it's usually a GoDaddy play. You want a little slot T technique. There's another reason why you run 8-hole reverse because you're pulling guards. You kind of see if they're reading guards or not. You're seeing what the defense is trying to figure out. Because if they're looking at the backfield, then they're going to get the misdirection fake. If they're looking at guards, then you'll know. Then you can come back with some other false keys or something to hit them for a big play, hopefully down the road. But yeah, that's why everybody wants to run 8-hole reverse, and you can run an 8-hole reverse out of pretty much any formation. You could get into 2x2 and run it. Well, it'd be hard to do it 2x2, but you can get in a spread formation and run it. So
Oh, so you said the bad word, coach. You said spread.
I
That's
did say spread. I know there's some teams down here that run it out of spread, and
I
that's
know.
what they do.
Yeah, but it's as one of my friends who runs the wing tee says all the time. He's a big wing tee person. He's very anti shotgun wing tee, and he'll says you're either pregnant or you're not. And I would say that's probably the same argument for most of you slot tee people. You're either pregnant or you're not. And I think
Yeah.
if you're in the shotgun, you're no longer pregnant. I think that'd be an so uh,
That's one thing when I was at Liberty Hill, we go kind of to piggyback on that. One thing at Liberty Hill, that's one thing people come talk to us and they say, "Oh, well, I'm going to do a slot T package."
yeah,
And that's what Gary would say is either you got to, jump all the way in or you can't just dip a toe into it and expect it to be successful. You got
right.
to just dive in head first and hopefully to swim.
Yeah.
So yeah, we kind of chuckle when people come in and say, "Oh, well, I'm going to add this as a little bit of a package." You're like, okay,
No.
all right, good luck.
Yeah, it's 99% of the time not going to work. So,
No, no.
um, but speaking of that, and it kind of goes to one of my last two questions is for people installing this for the first time, whether it's Texas or another state or whatever, or somebody who's been an assistant in the slot T for a while and finally getting reins on an offense at some school, anywhere, what recommendations do you have for them?
Um, my recommendation is to be patient with it. Know your kids. Obviously, try to put your kids in the best position you think is going to help you out. The slot T, you got your better, stronger guys on the strong side. Your quick side, maybe not so much. And then, of course, you get your backs where you can. And don't be too proud to move a kid as you start seeing, well, he might be better at this or he might be better at that. Keep it as simple as you can for the kids, and be patient with yourself and with them. A lot of people start into it and they may not have instant success, and then they want to scrap it. I'll be honest with you. Here at Florence, our first year here, we gave up 430 yards of all, or excuse me, 430 points a game in all our 10 games, and we only scored 70 points. This year we flipped it, so now we're up to 100 and I think we're 190 points, and we're down to 300 points against us. So, we don't have the speed. We're going to get last in every race at our district track meet. So, we just try to keep the ball and eat it. And I think that's one of the beauties of the slot T. So I think if you're patient with it and you just are convinced, sell your kids 3 yards a pop, 3 yards a pop. That's all we need. 3 yards. 3 yards times 4 is a first down. And that's what we do with that. We teach our kids to do those things, and they got to understand. It's one of the negatives of being at Liberty Hill. We had those kids trained on that. Now Liberty Hill's been so good at getting big chunk plays. They get frustrated if they don't get more than 4 yards of play, 5 yards of play. They're mad, and they're going to come after you. I had to play Liberty Hill when I was at Marble Falls, and we had slot T versus slot T, and that's never a fun action, especially when their defense knows exactly what's coming. And it was knockdown, drag out war my second year, but it was a fun game to watch, fun game to be a part of. You got to get your kids comfortable in being 3-4 yards and then putting the hand in the dirt and being physical.
Yep.
Even though you really don't be physical in practice. That's kind of the weird oxymoron of it, I guess.
That's the funny thing. When I talk to you, all of you, it's like we don't hit a lot of practice. Like it's like we do early on, but like then we run our drills, we run our stuff, and like we don't need to be physical in practice. Like we're trying to stay healthy and do what we need to do. And but speaking of kind of just staying healthy and just general, what does your pregame look like? Because I like asking, and I don't care what offense and defense you run. Like I love because everybody's different, and I think 80% of the time when I ask this question, coaches are not happy with their pregame and are always changing it, and it's just true. Like it's like they don't like it, and then there's a couple that do, but are still like, well, I'm open to this or that. So what does your pregame look like for your kids?
Well, I can tell you, the Liberty Hill pregame is different than what I do because I'm down to 30 kids and they're all going both ways. And if I do too much in pregame, they're going to be gassed by the first quarter. So what we've kind of gone to, we do about 5-minute segments and just real fast, real light, just kind of pop the pads a little bit and get used to it. The funniest thing about slot T teams is that we do line up. They'll line up in 2x2 for that matter, and we'll pass the ball for about 5, maybe 10 minutes in pregame. And people will come up and say, "You've done more passing in pregame than you do all year." Like, yeah, that's about true. So yeah, that's a funny thing about it. But we, do a little throwing and catching. But for the most part, we'll run plays against air. Offensive line will kind of pop pads a little bit. We'll tackle just a little bit. Get our kids just kind of used to the things. We started off here at Florence, and we did a lot, and our kids were getting real tired. So then we kind of modified it, shrank it down. Did pretty much the same thing at Ed in a small school. Liberty Hill is a little different, where you can expand a little bit because they had 50 kids suited up. You can kind of do those things. So when you're really one deep, maybe 1.5 deep, you got to kind of know your kids and know what you can do with your kids. We'll do kicking game for maybe. I couldn't do a lot of kicking game this year because my fullback who rushed for 1,500 yards was my punter, my kickoff guy, and my PAT guy. So we would do kicking for maybe 5 minutes, and then we bring the team out, do a team warm up, then break into small groups for maybe, like I said, maybe 4 or 5 minute segments, and then we're back in the house. So our pregame is no more than maybe 25, 30 minutes, which at Liberty Hill, the pregame is probably, they send their quarterback, centers, and tailbacks out, and they go for maybe 10 minutes just by themselves, just working the 228 pitch, the snap, the pitch. And then you'll start getting specialties out for another 10 minutes. And then you'll get, this group out for another 10 minutes. And then it's like they're out there for 45 minutes. The quarterbacks and centers are usually out about 50 to 55 minutes before kickoff. And then they go in maybe 10, 15 minutes before the kickoff, quick drink, go to the bathroom, then they're back out again. So it kind of depends upon where you are. But for us, being that we're so small, we got about maybe a 20, 25-minute warm-up. We're done. We're back in and we're going.
Okay. Well, coaches, give Coach a follow on Twitter, X, whatever it's called.
I'm at Syntax Trash. It's weird.
Yeah,
Syntax Trash.
I I thought we'd follow each other, so I checked while you were talking the pregame real quick, and I was like, "Yep, we are followed." Like I said, I tagged you. I'm like, "Yep, it's him." I'll put Coach's email in the bio too, so if you want to reach out to him that way. Coach got back to me pretty quickly. Like, share, subscribe, all that lovely jazz. Because YouTube algorithms, you get the point at this point. Like, Coach, you can tell how much I love selling that part. But whatever. And then check out our sponsor, Coachpad. Like I said, they've supported us for several years. They do a good job. They help out coaches across country. Otherwise, that's another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.